Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the public forum before the ordinary meeting of council on the 15th of November. Could you turn your phones off or on to quiet if you don't mind? We've got one person who wishes to speak, Rachel Russell, for Moss Vale Matters on the plastics recycling facility, if you'd like to. Don't rush, I won't be having any time, so just take your time, it's an important matter.
Thank you very much for that consideration. So, I have been asked to speak on behalf of the Moss Vale Matters community group who are represented here today, and I thank them for their trust. We are endeavouring to support council with our research to make responsible decisions relating to this proposal. I would like to acknowledge the quality, the depth and the professionalism of the research that has been conducted by the community that has been collated for this presentation. And owing to the time restraints of the public forum, I am representing what is just a fraction of the research that has been done and put into submissions that I felt is most pertinent. As expressed by a community member yesterday, the omissions and admissions from GHD require that all assumptions made by the proponent be questioned rather than accepted as a starting point. And this proponent has had no previous experience in this industry. So, the Moss Vale Matters community group requests that Wingecarribee Shire Council makes an amendment to its draft submission in relation to the Moss Vale Plastics Recycling Facility, that council oppose the proposed development in its current location. We need unequivocal opposition to this site suitability for a plastics recycling facility. Now, this is essential for council's position to be consistent with the following. We have firm and consistent opposition from both our state members of parliament that this is not the right site. The Honourable Member for Goulburn, Wendy Tuckerman, has spoken on numerous occasions against the proposal as recently as October this year, and we also have opposition to the site from Judy Hannan, MP. Of the 665 submissions in total, 97% of those were objections, and notably only 4 locals were in support. This project has absolutely no social licence. The zoning of this particular site, Industrial 1, to minimise any adverse effect of industry on other land uses. There are existing land uses with no significant buffer zone to this factory. These are irreconcilable inconsistencies relating to land use planning. This is going to be an 8-acre factory, and it deals with hazardous processes. So there is no safe land use planning related to this. The proposal is 30 metres away from Bioresources Australia and 150 metres from a residential area. So, did some research. There is a plastics recycling facility in Albury under a similar zoning, exactly identical zoning actually, in their LEP. In the determination, on the front page of the determination, the reasons for the suitability of that particular site was that there was significant separation from residential receivers or sensitive land uses. And that equated to 1.7 to 1.9 kilometres away from the nearest residential area over undulating terrain where there wasn't likely to be significant visual impacts either, impact on property values. They're even thinking of property values. We're just thinking of people's immediate health and safety concerns relating to this choice of site. Interestingly, it also noted that it wasn't in a flood-prone area and it wasn't in a riparian zone. This particular site fails on all 3 points, being just 30 metres away from a sensitive industry. Quite frankly, it's absolutely impossible to manage fire risk at this site. This is not fear-mongering, this is a statement of fact. There's no significant separation. We looked at the submission from Brendan Hurley from New South Wales Fire and Rescue in response to the SEARS, and it states that GSD has provided insufficient documentation at this point as to how this will be managed. And of note, in the document that he refers to, which I've got some extracts of here, it notes that careful site selection is part, and it has to be part of the scope for fire safety of managing fire risk in waste facilities. And you note the word careful because the opposite is self-explanatory. So this was recommended for referencing by New South Wales Fire and Rescue. And if I take some pertinent quotes from it, it says, historically, fire brigades have attended numerous fires at waste facilities in New South Wales. These fires are quite often large and have a detrimental impact on firefighting intervention, the environment, local community, and the waste industry itself. The potential fire size correlates with the nature of the combustible waste material, and we're looking at one of the largest, what is proposed to be one of the largest plastics recycling facilities in Australia. It also says it demands significant fire brigade resources and intervention over multiple days. Of note, the Albury factory also is less than half the size of this proposal. So this is just, in Australia, since 2019, just some of the list of fires. It is not actually an exhaustive list. It doesn't include some of the fires in factories. It doesn't include some of the fires that are happening in the loads, transporting the waste either. Noise and vibration. Oh, sorry, and on fire, before I move on, the closest hazmat crews. Currently equipped to deal with plastics recycling fire in Mossvale are located at Campbelltown, Shell Harbour and Oran Park, 45 minutes away if they are ready and available. Toxic substances detected by the EPA at plastics recycling fires specifically include hydrogen cyanide, benzene, chlorine, carbon monoxide and volatile organic compounds. So if we move on to noise and vibration being incompatible with existing land uses, the response to submissions states, construction noise levels during all stages of construction are predicted to result in noise levels above the interim construction noise guidelines. There are no guarantees that any attempts to mitigate that noise can or will be successful. Furthermore, and that's just during the construction, furthermore, during the 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week operations, GHD admits that they will be using, the company will be using 20-tonne trucks. That is a conservative estimate. So 20-tonne trucks have a decibel, it's about 80 decibels. So the requirements of the Bioresources Australia facility is that the noise and vibration do not exceed 60 decibels and they're 30 metres away. And that's not including the noise of the compactors in the factory, the fact that the roller doors are going to have to repeatedly be opening and shutting as the trucks go in. Then we come to the route. This is the fourth route proposed. In the initial environmental impact statement, GHD identified that this was the least preferred route due to, well, number one is safety concerns. So if I quote from the environmental impact statement here, one of the first problems is that there's a need for heavy vehicles to carry out a hook turn across a level rail crossing. The level crossing collisions between trains and vehicles are a major safety risk. Now, that refers to Level Crossing Safety Transport for New South Wales documents and National Railway Level Crossing Safety Strategy 2010 to 2020. And that there's going to be an increase in rail freight by 90% between 2010 and 2030. There's further safety issues involved with existing businesses who have been given approvals in the business park located on Redfield Road regarding safe access to travel east without having to perform a hook turn across the level crossing. And there are 3 level crossings that any vehicle servicing the plastics recycling facility will need to traverse before reaching the north-south road. The second issue relating to this route is that there does not appear to be any site survey of the level crossing, because if so, we would have seen some design specifications in the document to address the issues with the considerably different elevation of the railway line to the road at that point, because that will require some careful engineering considerations to see whether that's actually practical or not. We've also got, again, we come back to the problems with Braddon Road. It's completely inappropriate to have industrial trucks going along that particular residential road for safety concerns. We don't know whether council is aware whether GHD has required land owner consent to use that road. It's been privately funded for development. And it's misleading in the EIS in how it's presented. Oh, and if I go back, we also have the issue of trains that sit waiting over the level crossing at present, waiting to get into the Boral compound. And that's a frequent occurrence, and that can wait for up to 35 minutes, which is incompatible with the number of trucks that the proponent wished to move at that time. We've also got a road in the riparian zone. Now, while that is actually on a road that council had mapped out, there were changes to that in 2012 to how the licensing approvals for roads in riparian zones, which would require offsetting for the particular placement of that road, and that actually there is the scope to offset a connected riparian corridor within the development, and there isn't actually the scope for that for the level 2 watercourse that is in the riparian zone. So there's an image of the inconsistency and what hasn't been considered in the proponent's own map, where you can see the road is. This issue of microplastic pollution is actually an emerging body of research. So they're just starting to do the comprehensive research on how, firstly, what the impacts of the microplastics are, and which are considerable for health of the ecosystem, which corresponds to our own health, but also how much of the microplastic pollution actually enters the environment after filtration from plastics recycling facilities. So of note, this research is done in 2023, in May of this year. and it's entitled "The Potential for a Plastics Recycling Facility to Release Microplastic Pollution and Possible Filtration Remediation Effectiveness." So I'm going to quote from that document. "The release of very high concentrations of small microplastics or nanoplastics, particularly environmentally relevant sized of less than 10 microns." The second quote, "Microplastics released relative to the tonnage imported to the plant, it equates for about 6% of the total mass of plastic waste." So this result is not insignificant to a receiving waterway of sewer network, given that the discharged microplastic particles are predominantly less than 10 microns and therefore pose a risk to ecosystem health. Now, we're not sure what Council has considered in relation to that, but on page 119, the intention to discharge up to 10,000 litres per day, or if we apply that same formula to this factory, we're looking at, the wastewater treatment plant managing up to 7,200 tonnes of microplastic pollution per year. And there is an assumption by GHD that we're just going to be able to manage that. And I'm just not sure how, particularly within Sydney's drinking water catchment. Particularly when there's a question mark over what impact that will have on human research. One of the, any even basic perusal of the research, all of the discussion points in the research paper says more research is required and that there is gaps in the research at this point about the impacts of these developments. We've got omissions in this response to submissions regarding the building height. It does admit that, it does state that Building 1 has been adjusted to 15.5 metres. However, Building 2 still remains at 16.7 metres, and they haven't drawn in the emission stacks, which they state in the document are going to be more than 22 metres high from ground level and 1.2 metres in diameter times 4. The toll on the health of local residents, fearing for the safety and security of their homes, has been significant. To quote Ethos Urban in their social impact study this year, there is a significant level of community angst, emotional and psychological distress around this proposal, specifically relating to the concerns of microplastic pollution and changes to the character of the area and affecting people's identity and way of life. The proposal is inconsistent with the daily lives and routines of residents. For Wingecarribee Shire Council's position to be consistent with risk management and duty of care for our community, unequivocal opposition to this site's suitability for a plastics recycling facility is essential. In addition to what has been mentioned, legitimate concerns about air, water, odour, noise and visual pollution in a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week operation need to be eliminated rather than assumed that they can be mitigated when no careful land use planning has been demonstrated by the proponent. Now, this fact that there was no land use planning was admitted by Nancy Liu in an interview with the Sydney Morning Herald, and Deb Richards proof. Yeah, Deb Richards. So that's actually an admittance on their behalf. We want to attract industries into the Southern Highlands Innovation Park who demonstrate careful land use planning. To be unclear about this proposal would send the wrong message to industry about the need to carefully consider site suitability in the Wingecarribee Shire. So we need the solidarity and support of Council in clear opposition to this ill-conceived land use planning on behalf of the proponent to represent our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you saying that Moss Vale Matters would be opposed to this facility anywhere in the Shire or in that precinct?
We are saying that we can't see in this specific...
You haven't got to answer if you don't want to. It's just
No, that's fine. That's fine, Mr. Administrator. In this particular site, because that is the land that they have purchased.
Yeah, that's not the question.
But it requires a buffer zone. If we look at the Albury example, it said for a factory less than half the size of this, a buffer zone between 1.7 and 1.9 kilometres is required. Now, Wendy Tuckerman has offered to assist the proponent in finding a more suitable site. This specific proposal at this site cannot work. And in regards to... I don't think anyone
disagrees on that with you. Yeah. But what I'm asking is there another site within the...
Southern Highlands Industrial Innovation Park?
It could possibly work. You haven't got to answer if you don't want to. That's your call.
No, that's fine. And because I haven't... The general sentiment of the Moss Vale Matters group would be absolutely not. It's the Sydney's drinking water catchment for one. Yes, there are. It's not a suitable industry. And we can look at the Parks precinct as where they really have paid attention to making sure that any plastics recycling facility has a suitable buffer zone. But we can also look at the lack of infrastructure for fire, for New South Wales Fire and Rescue to actually be able to access the site. Yes, when an incident occurs, because what we're seeing is that with lithium-ion batteries just perpetually getting chucked down in plastic wastes, it's an incendiary nightmare.
Okay, look, I thank you for the detail, and I thank those who helped prepare this as well. I think it's been very beneficial, particularly for my understanding as well. So thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wants to be heard on this matter? Okay, well, we'll start the council meeting.